When Tom finally returned to the precinct, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, he filed a false report, a vague account of a near miss, the details blurred by a truth too shattering to utter. Days bled into a haze of distraction. The weight of Malik's confession was a constant, suffocating presence. How could Malik have known such intimate details of his past? How did he possess that photograph, a relic of a life Tom had meticulously buried? Driven by a desperate, gnawing need for certainty, Tom returned to the abandoned garage. He searched frantically, his eyes scanning the dusty floor until he spotted it, a small, dark stain. Malik's blood. He carefully collected a sample, his hands trembling, and submitted it for a DNA paternity test. The wait was agonizing, each tick of the clock amplifying his fear and a fragile, nascent hope. When the results came back, the words on the paper confirmed his deepest fears and his most profound, unspoken desires. Malik was truly his son. This revelation shattered Tom's ordered world. Everything he thought he knew, every conviction he held, crumbled around him. His pursuit of the ghost transformed. He began tracking Malik again, but this time, the hunt was driven by a desperate longing for connection, a yearning to understand, to atone. He found a way to reach out, a coded message in a newspaper ad, a discreet meeting arranged through a reluctant intermediary. They met in a quiet, anonymous cafe on the edge of town, two men linked by blood and a lifetime of unspoken truths. Malik, now stripped of his mask and the defiant bravado it afforded him, recounted his full story, his mother's debilitating illness, the crushing medical bills, and how his desperate love for her had driven him into a life of crime, a life Janelle, in her fragile state, was entirely unaware of. In an act of profound self-redemption, a desperate attempt to bridge the chasm of their past, Tom began to help. He started paying Janelle's mounting medical bills, quietly diverting funds, sacrificing his own savings. He arrived at the hospital ward one afternoon, his heart pounding, a lump in his throat. Janelle lay frail and sleeping, a mere shadow of the vibrant woman he remembered. Her once luxuriant hair had fallen out from the brutal chemotherapy. Malik gently woke her. Her eyes fluttered open, tired and dim. Then, they landed on Tom. Recognition flickered, a slow dawning understanding in her weary gaze. Tears welled in both their eyes, silent rivers carving paths down their cheeks. No words were spoken, none were needed. The room was thick with unspoken emotions, regret, forgiveness, a lingering echo of love. She tried to speak, to utter his name, but the powerful drugs held her captive, her voice a mere whisper in her throat. Soon after, her eyes fluttered closed, and she slipped away, a quiet sigh escaping her lips. The room fell silent, save for the hushed sobs of Malik and the strangled cries of Tom. News of Tom and Malik's unlikely connection, their clandestine meetings, and Tom's sudden, unexplained financial assistance began to leak through the police grapevine. The lines between detective and criminal blurred, becoming dangerously indistinguishable. The police were now after Tom, his years of unwavering loyalty to the force crumbling under the weight of his personal demons. He was caught in an impossible bind: protect his son, his newly discovered flesh and blood, or uphold the law he had sworn to defend. Without hesitation, Tom chose his son. He became Malik's refuge, a shield against the relentless pursuit of justice. His current wife, a woman who had known him as a steadfast, incorruptible officer, was utterly bewildered. She couldn't fathom how her husband had transformed from a relentless detective into someone actively hiding and protecting a notorious criminal. Tom, tormented by his secret, couldn't bring himself to explain, couldn't unleash the devastating truth about his past and Malik's parentage. Janelle's medical bills continued to mount, a grim reminder of the financial burden. Malik, at Tom's insistence, had stopped his heists. "I'll take care of the bills, just stop robbing please," Tom had pleaded, his voice laced with desperation. But Tom's savings were dwindling, his legitimate income insufficient to cover the staggering debt. A part of him, a deeply buried part, still loved Janelle, a love that transcended his current marriage and life. He had 2 daughters now, a family he cherished, but this newfound connection to Malik, to Janelle's legacy, stirred a primal need for atonement. Out of sheer desperation, with no other options left to clear the lingering debts and provide for Malik's future, Tom and Malik concocted a plan for one last, audacious heist. It was meticulously planned, every detail scrutinized, every contingency considered. They believed this would be their final act, their ultimate sacrifice for redemption. But fate, it seemed, had one more devastating twist in store. Inside the bank, the meticulously planned heist went horribly wrong. Alarms blared prematurely, and the familiar cacophony of approaching sirens filled the air. In the chaos, Malik found himself face to face with a young woman, a banker, her eyes wide with terror. His gaze fell to her hand and his breath hitched. There, on her wrist, was a distinctive birthmark, an identical mirror of the one etched onto his own hand. He tried to brush it off, a trick of the light, a figment of his overstressed mind. But the resemblance, the inexplicable pull, was too powerful to ignore. She looked at him, masked and imposing, but something in her eyes, in the fleeting instant their gazes locked, resonated deep within her. In that suspended moment, a silent recognition passed between them. Tom, Malik, and the young woman stood frozen, caught in a tableau of impending doom and sudden revelation. Malik, driven by an instinct he couldn't comprehend, ripped off his mask, his eyes wide with a desperate, questioning hope as he stared at her. She stood transfixed, her terror momentarily eclipsed by a profound sense of recognition, a familiar echo in his eyes. Tom roared, his voice a raw cry of despair, but it was too late. The masks were off, the secret exposed. In that agonizing moment of shattered anonymity and shocking reconciliation, the bank's doors burst open, and a swarm of police and SWAT officers flooded the room. Malik, jolted back to reality, tried to run, but a gunshot cracked through the air. He stumbled, a searing pain in his chest, and fell, collapsing onto the trembling body of his long-lost sister. Tom stood frozen, a spectator to his own unraveling. Tears streamed down his face, a mixture of pain, rage, despair, and a profound, bone-deep sorrow. His world had come crashing down. He watched, helpless, as they took his son away, his twin daughter, still in shock, following closely behind the stretcher. Malik didn't die. He was rushed to the hospital, treated for his gunshot wound, and eventually, after a long, arduous recovery, sentenced to 5 years in prison. Tom, his career shattered, his reputation irrevocably tarnished, was relieved of duty, his badge confiscated, his life as a detective over. But in the ashes of their shared tragedy, a new kind of family began to form. Malik's sister, driven by a newfound love for her brother and a quiet determination to honor their mother, took over Janelle's remaining medical bills. 2 years later, a miracle occurred. Janelle, against all odds, was declared cancer-free. Now, as the years tick by, a family once fractured by secrets, lies, and the cruel hand of fate waits. They await Malik's release, for a proper reunion, a chance to heal, to forge a new path forward, together. The long shadow of the ghost had finally lifted, replaced by the uncertain, yet hopeful, dawn of a family reborn.
For more interesting stories, please support us by tapping the like, subscribe, and comment button.